Hey there, welcome to the DFS Build NFL Preseason Edition. This is the third preseason video that we are doing. We did the Hall of Fame game, and we had some good plays for that. And then we did the three-gamer on Thursday, and certainly had some good plays for that as well. I definitely touched on Tanner Hudson in my write-up on Discord, and I touched on him and Drew Sample in the video. My core, and then Tanner Hudson ended up playing basically the entire game. And scored 2 touchdowns, which was just insane. So if you played him, hats off to you. I did have him because I talked about him and I did use him a good bit, but I didn't have him quite as much as I wish I would have had him. And I had way too much Giddens and Taj Brooks, who combined for like 5 points. So just absolutely brutal. That said, we did hit some other plays. Torrey Horton scored a touchdown. He was great already. And then we did talk about Keaton Mitchell. Tyler Warren had 7 fantasy points, which for the slate was pretty good. I said Jamar Chase was a high upside volatile play, 17 fantasy points. I mentioned Joe Burrow as my third favorite quarterback on the slate, 12 fantasy points, which for the slate was pretty good. Somebody I was not on at all, and this is just another reminder that preseason DFS going to preseason. It's going to go preseason. It's very volatile. Tanner McKee really was not on that. I think he was like 12% owned or something. So pretty contrarian. But just another reminder to kind of consider everybody. Like if they're going to play, like even if they're not very good, some people might argue that he is good. But the point is, you got to keep your options open. Overall, we did okay. We're still waiting for the end of the night here for this Raiders-Seahawks game. We'll see how we do, but hopefully the video helps you out in some way and you end up doing pretty well. If it did, or if this video helps you out, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Both those things help us out quite a bit. And if you want more advice and finalized picks for preseason or NFL when it rolls around, or MMA, WNBA, MLB, we're doing it all, and it's just $5.99 for all the write-ups, all the picks, and all the advice, plus the access to Discord and our community. All right, so let's get to it. Another 3-gamer on Friday, so should be fun. Obviously, when it's preseason, and it's just a 3-game slate, you kind of have to hit the nuts, so to speak. You got to hit all the right plays. But at the same time, I have a ton of lineups that are still reasonably in contention. Certainly a lot that are possibly going to cash here, despite having like 2 terrible plays in Giddens and Brooks, who, before knew the result, they were good plays. They made sense. But Giddens did not get the Kamani Vidal treatment, and he only played in the first half, which probably tells me, by the way, that if you're trying to pick up a sleeper for Dynasty or something, Giddens, he might have the inside track on the number 2 job because Khalil Herbert was playing deep into that game. That's neither here nor there. So let's get to it here. Detroit and Atlanta in the first game. Detroit obviously didn't play any of their main guys in the Hall of Fame game. So there's no news yet on the Lions. Another good reason why you might want to hop into our Discord and Patreon, because we will get that information and we'll finalize a core. And if the Lions starters are all playing a bunch of minutes, you better believe we're going to be interested in the likes of Jahmyr Gibbs, the Sun God, even Goff, and all that. So right now, though, it's still Detroit is a very good, experienced team at this point. They won like 15 games last year. They have Super Bowl aspirations. It doesn't really make a lot of sense for them to go super hard in the preseason. But after not playing at all in the previous game, I wouldn't be that shocked to see them play a little bit. So right now, no news on them. I will say if they're in, I'll have a ton of interest in their main guys. If they're not, Isaac Tesla is probably the main guy I'll be looking at. And we can also look at, guys like Vicky, maybe even Greg Reynolds again, because they fed him for no reason in the previous game. Hendon Hooker would be looking like a really good play. Kyle Allen and him both split the snaps in the first game. But if Goff were to not start or be extremely limited, I would prefer Hooker for sure. He has rushing upside and was very good in the preseason last year. So that's where I would start there. At running back, I would like Jabari Small in the first game with Detroit. Just depends on who plays. If Gibbs and Montgomery are going to play, then I'd be a lot less interested in him. But if they're out, then he would be appealing. Tesla would probably be the main guy I'd be looking at here unless the Detroit players are in, and I'm not really interested in their tight ends unless Laporta plays. On the other side for the Falcons, they're just going youth movement. So They're not playing Michael Penix. I mean, he's obviously a young guy, but they're just not worried about their starters for this game. No Kirk Cousins, no Penix, and I would imagine that kind of trickles the rest of the roster. So you can probably bet on no Bijan, no Drake London, probably no Kyle Pitts. Just they're not going to risk it with guys, which kind of means this is a cloudy game for them because they're splitting the quarterback reps between Emory Jones and Easton Stick. I mean, that doesn't feel amazing to me. Like, that's not where I want to go on this slate. I will say Easton Stick is my preference of the two. He has more NFL experience. He does have really nice rushing ability. And he performed well in the preseason and in a couple of regular season games. So for DFS purposes, Easton Stick is in my player pool at the quarterback position. And if we get like an entire half of Easton Stick, I think that's viable. We can definitely look at that. Moving on to the rest of the Falcons here. He might end up starting this game with Bijan Probably out. There's no actual information on him or the Atlanta depth chart officially for this game. But if Bijan's out, I would imagine Algier has a solid chance to go full Craig Reynolds on us and get like 10 carries and maybe get a touchdown here. So he could actually be a really good play. We're just going to have to, what we're actually looking at. If he doesn't play, we can certainly look at Carlos Washington. But Watson is pretty explosive. If he gets in, that would be an interesting one. And just Sean Corbin, if Bijan and possibly even Algier end up not playing, Corbin was a stud in the UFL. So I would actually have a lot of interest in him if we can be confidently looking at this Atlanta backfield as if, they're not going to be like 5 men deep. If Bijan is out and hopefully Algier as well, then Dotson and Corbin are guys that I would have interest in. It just feels like overall, though, it's a bit of a tight spot because we could be looking at 4 solid backs just eating into each other, and that doesn't mean we can't play them. It just means that they would be, it just would be a more volatile situation where I wouldn't be able to confidently say like this one guy is for sure the play that you absolutely have to have. They would just be on my radar until we get more official word on what the team's going to do. Wide receiver, Mooney's banged up. He's probably not going to play. Drake London's probably not going to play. Raver McLeod's kind of a veteran. Probably wouldn't play either just because it seems like they're sitting all their starters. So first guys we could look at would be Kaderil Hodge. He had some nice moments even during the regular season last year. He's a bit of an explosive player. TJ Chark. So they have a couple guys here that we recognize that could be. I would just need to get confirmation on like when or like who is actually to be active in the game and which guys are out, and then we can kind of start looking at this. The issue is the quarterback situation isn't very reliable, and none of these guys really stand out. But it's kind of the same as like the Philly situation. Did I go into that state thinking Tanner McKee and forget who the guy was who did it, but the wide receiver who had like 8 catches and a touchdown, just absolutely nuts. Did I really think they were going to go explode and nuke? No. So certainly the Falcons stack could work out. So I'm not gonna say that they're not viable for sure. At tight end, not really much behind Kyle Pitts. If Kyle Pitts is out, I don't have a lot of interest in the Falcons tight end situation. But obviously, those minutes or those snaps could be divided up between those guys, so they wouldn't be completely out of play. Just not a priority for me whatsoever. So that does it for the Lions-Falcons game. Just need more news. Like we need confirmation. Just right now we know Falcon starters aren't in, and Detroit, I would assume Detroit isn't going to be super, super active. Cleveland, though, is kind of making it a little bit easier for us on this slate. Joe Flacco, the vet, he's the QB1 right now, and he's not going to play in this game. Dylan Gabriel and Kenny Pickett both have injuries, and they will not play in this game. And they just signed who did they sign? I think it's like Huntley or something. I think it's Tyler Huntley. It's just, Tyler Huntley. So he should probably play in the game, but Shadur Sanders is going to start the game. I would imagine play the entire first half, maybe more, because Huntley doesn't really know the offense. He's been away from, any football team since last year. So it's certainly favoring Shadur. And right now, even though I don't necessarily trust him or even believe in him really as a prospect, what else can we do on this slate but look at him and the fact that he's starting, the fact that they don't have any other quarterbacks but one dude who shouldn't even be playing right now. And that at a minimum, you would imagine he's going to get 2 quarters to work with here, maybe more. So just based off of playing time, I want all of the Shadur Sanders I can handle, kind of like Jalen Milroe going into tonight. Yeah, it's still Thursday as I do this, but we want guys who in the preseason are going to play and going to play a lot. And so Sanders looks like that. We know Sanders is accurate. Like in college, he's an accurate player. He played in big time situations. He even has a good deep ball. The problem is they're not playing any of their main guys. So like no Cedric Tillman, no Jerry Jeudy, no David Njoku. So like he's working with just like spares out there. But I think playing time alone makes Sanders the QB1 on the slate for me. And we'll just see how it shakes out with the Lions and Falcons, and we'll touch on the other guys too. At running back, no Judkins here. Quinshon Judkins, stud in theory, but he obviously has his domestic violence thing going on, and he's not even signed. So he's not going to play in this game. He's not going to be there until he signs and this legal matter starts clearing up. So with him out, I would imagine they'll put Jerome Ford in bubble wrap because they know what to have in Jerome Ford. And worst case scenario, they probably want to get to week 1 with Jerome Ford ready to rock. And then they can go to war with him, because Judkins is there, tiny chance Ford could play, I guess, but I just don't think he will. That puts Dylan Sampson as the first man up and my personal RB1 on this slate. It feels really fun, right, to just stack up the Browns in any setting that is not true, but Dylan Sampson has a path to the RB1 spot in Cleveland. And if he does well enough in training camp and preseason, why can't he unseat, Jerome Ford and to a lesser extent Judkins? Judkins, this whole thing is like, is he going to get suspended? Is this legal situation going to, mess with his status? And if it does, then Dylan Sampson, if he plays enough, could work his way into the situation. No, but that side, the Browns are just going to give him a chance here to prove himself. So he looks really, really good. You can also look to like Pierre Strong, who will be going to prove himself and actually finalize spot here. But that's probably my anti-stops. It's most maybe Pierre Strong, but into anything else, it's just kind of Sampson or bust for me. With Jeudy and Cedric Tillman out, Deontay Johnson actually is kind of scheduled to start in this game. He's veteran and pretty proven. Like he hasn't been good the last year and a half, but it's always possible he can turn it around, and it looks like they're going to give him the opportunity to do that. I don't know how much I trust that, especially with a rookie quarterback throwing passes, but I think he's in play for sure. I don't know how much he's going to play, but I think he's viable just because they probably want to give Shadur a chance to succeed here. The guy I'd really be looking at, though, is going to be Jamari Thrash. Did not do much as a rookie last year, but we know he can make big plays. He was a stud in college, and I think he's probably the guy that's going to get the most burn that actually has a considerable amount of upside. No David Bell either, so you certainly can look at these other guys here, but I would be looking at Thrash, and then to a lesser extent, I would then be looking at Deontay. At tight end, no Njoku, so I am loving the idea of Harold Fannin Jr. By the way, this slate is just loaded with viable tight end options, which is not something you can always say. Thursday's slate was pretty good too, honestly. You had Tyler Warren, you had Elijah Roro, you had Tanner Hudson. But no, Harold Fannin was super productive in college, and the Browns brought him in here to compete for the second spot behind Njoku. And with no Njoku in this game, he looks like the guy. I would also consider Sal Cannella, stud in the UFL. Hasn't really figured out the NFL yet, but he could get an opportunity here to prove himself. And especially with no Njoku, I don't mind taking a chance on him. Even more so if a lot of the ownership is going to block to Fannin. But I really, really like Fannin, and much like Hudson today, that looks like pretty good shot. If that ends up being the case, I don't have a problem with it. On the Panthers side, we're expected to see the Panthers for like 2 drives. That's what they said about the Bengals, and then Joe Burrow and them went and lit it up. Burrow threw 2 touchdowns. Jamar Chase had 17 fantasy points. So it's risky. Panthers aren't the Bengals for one, and you just never know. You never know what they're going to do. It's the first game too. I think this is viable. I just don't really fully trust it, and I don't think it's super necessary. Like if we're just going to for sure get 2+ quarters out of Shadur Sanders, I'd much rather do that. But I think if you want to get control and want to take a risk, is okay. Not really interested in the geriatric Andy Dalton, but I guess he's technically in play if you want to do that. At running back, Chuba Hubbard, he'll play a series or two. Don't think go for that. But I mean, I just feel like now that we've seen a couple of these preseason games go down, and just like a reminder of the fact that even if you get 2-3 series, like as a running back, it's just not enough unless you score a touchdown or get a ton of catches. So I think Hubbard, just the fact that he's going to be out there, you can play him, and he's not going to be owned. Just not something I'm going to do. Rico Daldo fighting for the running back 2 spot in Carolina. I think he's okay. He should get a lot more work than Hubbard. But the guy I'd mostly be looking at is Trevor Etienne, Georgia stud, coming over to Carolina, just trying to make the team. But with Miles Sanders no longer there, I think that's actually pretty possible. And with Hubbard probably very limited in this, I think Etienne could end up getting a lot of work and look like a really, really solid play. At wide receiver, it's possible that some of the starters, in particular, Ted McMillan, who's a rookie, and Xavier Legette, who is only a second-year player, who only had flashes as a player last year, it's possible those guys end up getting a little more work even without Bryce Young on the field. So I think they're kind of interesting. If they are attached to Bryce Young in the whole, like, 2 series and that's it, logic, then they're pretty risky. But I think Ted McMillan, big threat, red zone threat, I think he's pretty interesting. Just a lot safer than Legette. And if one of them's going to get more burn throughout the game, it would be Xavier, because a little bit more. And obviously, it seems like they feel a lot better about Tet so far. I think both are okay, just not priorities for me, just because it's a volatile situation. Jalen Coker, even though he kind of flat last year for them as a rookie, really came on strong in the second half. It's tough to see like where he falls in line, because they already have Tet is going to be a stud, in my opinion. Thielen is producing. Hunter Renfrow is like running routes like a god again. So like Carolina is stacked at wide receiver, like whether you want to admit it or not. So while you would have maybe thought he had like solid ground to stand on, he might have to prove himself even more. So decent chance he gets some good burn here. Same with Hunter Renfrow. Hunter Renfrow is 29 and might play a good portion of this game if he's healthy. Let me check his status actually, because I think he's banged up. He's got a hamstring, so he will not be in there, I don't think. So Coker as a than those guys. The one I really want to get to is Jimmy Horn Jr. Just because if Carolina's guys are only going to play 2 series max, then we can feel pretty darn good that somebody like Jimmy Horn is going to play a good chunk of this game. Now, Jimmy Horn is a tiny dude, but he is very flashy, very quick twitch, very explosive. And just as long as they manufacture him touches, I think he's going to be really interesting here. So I like him a lot, and he's going to be a guy I get to quite a bit. All right, moving on. Tight end too. I guess you can look at Jatavian Sanders. No Tommy Tremble here. So is Sanders only going to get 2 series like the rest of the starters? Probably. So I don't feel great about him, but you can certainly look there. You can play with their backups if you want, but I don't really feel obligated to do that. Going over to Washington, we are not going to get their starters. Jaden Daniels and co. I playing at all. There's no news right here, but I feel like I read it somewhere else that they're not going to play. Again, if you hop into our Patreon Discord, I'll get finalized picks once that news drops, and you won't have to really worry about getting in researching, kind of like guessing about it. But I don't think Daniels is going to be in play. Marcus Mariota, I believe, is banged up. His lower leg strain. That was only a couple days ago. The concern level is low, but I just would imagine it's a decent chance he doesn't play at all. If he's out and Daniels is out, we're looking at Josh Johnson, who's pushing 40, and Sam Hartman, who probably is not an NFL quarterback. So Hartman was in college, but he's not a guy that we should feel amazing about. But what we should feel pretty good about is, number one, there's probably only 2 guys playing quarterback for them today, or on Friday rather. And number 2, Josh Johnson is old and has a ton of experience with 100 teams. Basically, he's basically played for like every team in the NFL. So if Josh Johnson is going to be limited in any way, like if they're like, we're just going to let Josh play a quarter and then give it to Hartman, like we could see like 3 quarters of Hartman possibly, or at least 2 quarters. So yes, I'm interested in Hartman a little bit more than Josh Johnson, because he's not ancient and he's not a veteran that they could just decide to pull the plug on. But I do have a little bit of interest in Josh Johnson too, just because he does have that dual threat ability, and he might be the guy earning that backup slot over Mariota when it's all said and done. It's not impossible, especially if Mariota's going to be banged up. So just keep an eye on that. I think both are in play, but right now I'm leaning Hartman a little bit. At running back, if they're sitting their starters, we can cross Brian Robinson Jr. and Austin Eckler off the list. If one of them ends up playing, they're in play. I just wouldn't feel amazing about their playing time. Instead, I'm looking at Chris Rodriguez, nice, shifty, explosive back. A bit of a scat back, but I don't really care. It's the preseason. He's just not going to win the starting job or anything for them. But in the preseason, he should get a lot of playing time if one or both those guys are out or limited. So he looks really good. Jeremy McNichols, basically the same type of player, but he's a veteran. So I would imagine Rodriguez would get more work over him. Then you got the rookie, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. Again, he's going to get a ton of work. So him and Rodriguez both look really good. And that's where I would start with Washington for sure at RB. Terry McLaurin is out. I'm pretty sure it's just a holdout still. Just make sure it's not an injury. Well, they say he's got an ankle issue, but really we know he just kind of wants to be traded or get paid. So he's just not going to play. And if the starters aren't playing, there's going to be no Debo and probably no Noah Brown. I suppose if Noah Brown is in, he's viable. But the guys I'm really looking at are going to be Luke McCaffrey, who is playing for the wide receiver 3 spot. And then you also have Jalen Lane. Right now I lean McCaffrey, but I think both of those guys look pretty good. And you also have the rookie Ja'Cory Brooks. He also looks pretty good. So I think he's going to be an interesting option. You got a veteran in here too. I think 2 of them, KJ Osborne and Michael Gallup, also fighting for position in this wide receiver core. It's honestly a pretty darn loaded wide receiver core in terms of depth and explosiveness. So, all those guys would be in play with Terry out and Debo probably sitting too. But McCaffrey is the one that stands out the most for me. The tight end, Zach Ertz, will probably be out, which probably gives a little bit more run to somebody like John Bates. But John Bates is not it's not a sexy play. It's not a guy I want to click very often. So Ben Sinnott is going to be the one. He just has stud makeup. I just feel like he can be really, really good if he ends up getting an opportunity to be the starter. And with Zach Ertz pushing 35 years of age, I think that's going to happen eventually. But just why not? He really didn't get any chances as a rookie, whether it was his inability to produce or just not even being on the field a good portion of the time. Whatever the case, he just didn't really have a chance. So I would imagine they're going to allow him to tee off a bit in the preseason, especially since he's been looking a lot better in training camp. All right, so over the Patriots side, I believe the Patriots are going to play their starters and probably just a handful of drives here, kind of like the Panthers. So I think Drake May is in play, just not going to be super, super reliable. And then we can look at Josh Dobbs as the veteran, and then we can have Ben Woolridge also. So I don't know how good we can feel about that unless we know for sure, if they come out and say how many snaps these guys are getting. But as it plays out, it's just, again, at quarterback, I'm probably just looking at Shedeur, or I'm going back to guys that I feel confident are going to get an entire half, like Easton Stick or Sam Hartman or something. They don't feel great, no doubt about it. But it all boils down to Shedeur looking like the best play, though. At RB, Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson, they're going to play. They're going to be out there for a couple drives at least. So I think they're, one of them could score a touchdown. They could get a couple catches or have a big play. So you can use them. They're just not going to be core plays just because they're not expected to play a ton of the game. With that being the case, Antonio Gibson basically fighting for possibly a roster spot just because he hasn't been a super consistent or super productive player with New England, and just kind of overall throughout his career kind of erratic, especially with fumbles and stuff. He kind of has to prove himself. So I think there's a decent chance he could be a bit of a preseason darling on this slate. So I'm definitely going to keep him in my player pool. But the guy I really have interest in is Lan Larison, who was quite productive in his last year of college, pretty shifty, underrated athlete, just does not go down. Also, if you watch his highlights, he is quite an impressive runner. So if he just gets an opportunity and it just gets out there and gets touches, I think he is pretty interesting. The only question is he's the 4th RB in there. So it's a little dicey. I think he's an interesting sleeper, nice contrarian play, but can't make him a core play just because if he's even going to see the field. I felt this way about Raheem Sanders in the Hall of Fame game. And in the Hall of Fame game, they were playing Hassan Haskins and Kamani Vidal like a ton, and they didn't even give this guy one snap. So that just happens sometimes. So you don't want to play with fire too much if you don't have to. At wide receiver, Stephon Diggs is banged up. I don't think he's going to end up playing in this game. He's got a cut on his knee. I don't know. And he's coming back from the ACL tear. Just have to see if he's going to play. I wouldn't feel too confident in him, even if he did. You have Demario Douglas. You have Keyshawn Butte. So you have guys who invest for them. Mac Hollins in there. Like, none of this feels good. Kendrick Bourne, he's got a lower leg issue. So anytime a guy is on the injury report the same week of their game, like, I want nothing to do with that in a preseason game. So I'm out on Diggs. I'm out on Bourne. I don't really have a lot of interest in Douglas or Butte here. But they got all these other young guys that absolutely should play a ton and could hit big. I'll first just talk about Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, just because they were such zeros as rookies last year, but super, super hyped. Both these guys can be big play threats. They were super productive in college. So, and they have draft pedigree too. So, New England has every reason to give them major burn and let them prove themselves. So I like them both quite a bit, especially if some of these other vets are going to sit. But the one, of course, everybody's talking about is Kyle Williams, sensational in camp, great, terrific athlete, can win from all over the field. So, I mean, it's just like Torrey Horton again on this from Thursday to Friday here. I don't really care if Kyle Williams is going to be owned. He just looks like a smash play. The only issue is he's kind of quickly becoming New England's best receiver that isn't named Stephon Diggs. So do the Patriots really want to risk him beyond the first two series? I don't know. So I have a lot of interest in him just because I think he's going to get volume even in a preseason game. But Polk and Baker are really, really interesting as guys they're going to probably leak into the second half. All right, a tight end, Austin Hooper, I believe, is banged up. I think he might even be on a pup list or something. Yeah, he was on it. Now he's back in practice. I'm a little bit not really super sure how involved he's going to be. Doesn't Will Dissly me and come out of nowhere as a vet to come in and score a touchdown when I'm not on him at all. But if he hasn't even been practicing lately and then he suddenly comes back, just not a guy I'm going to be confident in. Hunter Henry should be out there for a couple series with a starter, so you can try him if you want to. But I would really probably just look at Jaheim Bell. We know he's a good athlete. We know he's got a lot to prove because he's got no standing in the team as the third tight end right now. But if he's going to time in the second half, I think he's a viable body for sure. All right, that is going to do it for this 3-game slate. There's actually a lot more to hash out. We need official news from the Lions. We need more kind of concrete news from the Panthers and Patriots as far as how much they're going to play these guys. And we also want a clear understanding of who's starting for the Commanders and how much Josh Johnson and Sam Hartman are playing. That said, we already can feel pretty good about Shadur Sanders, Dylan Thompson, and Harold Fannin from the Browns. I really like Jimmy Horn Jr. and Ben Sinnott should get good burn for Washington too. So that's kind of a loose core that I'm looking at right now. And on Friday, closer to the middle of the day, we're going to have a better idea of who we can trust. All right, that does it for me. Hopefully that helps you out, fleshes out the slate a little bit, and then we can get to some finalized plays working into Friday night. If this helped you in any way, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Both those things help us out quite a bit. All right, thanks for watching. Good luck.